1, 2, 3. The white cube, the white balance.
I'm just gonna. Well, if you can run it,
Yeah, I just left the jacket on me for the
just stick it on there.
Mr. Hart?
Hey, Tim?
Good morning, sir. Good to see you. Hope you had a good Christmas.
We did.
I was looking at Kelvin's Facebook page. I was about to say, you're going to open up a restaurant. You got all those turkeys and
Kel's Kitchen is a family affair.
You do it right. You do it right.
I don't want your money.
We're waiting for my invite there, Kelvin. It's been 8 years now. Come on. Kip, can you look like in the middle?
Mm-hmm. Right, sure.
Everybody all set?
All ready? Good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yesterday morning, investigators for the Tuscaloosa Police Department's Criminal Investigation Division ran a search warrant at a residence in the 5600 block of East 20th Avenue in relation to a ongoing problem of catalytic converters being stolen and resold. The target of this operation was an individual that has been purchasing catalytic converters. At this time, we do not know if any of the ones that we seized from his property were stolen, with the exception of one yesterday afternoon. But during the operation, we recovered over 150 catalytic converters and other exhaust components for exhaust systems. Gregory Bernard Hudson, 58 years age, was arrested and charged with 10 counts of failing to provide proper documentation as a secondary metal recycler in relation to his bookkeeping and documentation of purchasing these converters that he took in from various individuals. One thing we noticed that is people came from all over, from other states, from other counties, to his residence to sell him these converters, and he in turn would sell them to a higher level recycler as part of the process. At this time, we're not saying Mr. Hudson stole any of the converters, any of the components. It's just that he was failing to obtain proper documentation that's outlined in the new Alabama law that came into effect in June. The count of receiving stolen property is because we did locate one catalytic converter that was actually stolen yesterday morning at his property. There were separate arrests made in that case also.
What kind of business does he own or run?
It's considered a secondary metal recycler, and he takes in different various forms of metals and scraps them or sells them to a bigger recycler, primarily catalytic converters.
How big of a case would you call this? If you and the department feel you've solved it in a number of other unsolved similar cases?
In part of the investigation, we determined that the 150 or so converters he had on his property were the result of 2 weeks' worth of work for him. And as we know, catalytic converter thefts have been a huge problem throughout the United States. In Tuscaloosa, recently we've had 102 reports filed so far this year. Now, that's just 100 reports. Each report can contain numerous catalytic converters. In one report, there was 12 stolen from one location and another 8. So, you can easily double that number. But also, we're not saying that these went to Mr. Hudson. There were several other recyclers that have taken this property, and some of those have been shut down also.
Kip, how big are these catalytic converter thefts? It's always a problem. Just how problematic are these crimes for our county?
Well, we noticed in January to May of last year, there were 22 reports, okay? From May to July, it jumped to 46. So that's when we really started focusing back during the summer when we saw this huge increase. And again, that's about the time it also started across the United States as far as an upsurge in them.
What's your message that TPD is not going to, that you guys are going to be actively pursuing people that are stealing these? What's your message to that population of criminals?
Well, we've been able to make a number of arrests of the actual thieves themselves. And again, Mr. Hudson's being charged with just failing to document properly. That's one step the state took to help curb some of this black market activity of the stolen converters, and setting very strict guidelines for a person that purchases one off the street. He failed to do any of that, and that's where we'll keep on looking. As Mr. Hudson or anybody else that we can come across in our jurisdiction, we're going to see if we can use these new laws to help curb this type of crime.
To me, that says you guys aren't going to tolerate this, and that's
Well, we're not, because again, if a person has a converter stolen, it's several $1,000s worth of damage or replacements that's going to cost them or the insurance company.
Chip, are you guys gonna take any action to try to get his business license?
That's something we're looking into. Again, we see several documents, several books, to continue to look in to see how big of a dealer, recycler he was. And that's something we're definitely going to approach with the state and the city.
How did you become aware of him?
Through intel from other arrestees.
Tell us a little bit more about the new law you mentioned earlier.
It's quoted in the press release that Stephanie sent out, but essentially, if you're going to do business, if I'm going to take in any type of scrap metal, iron, wiring, copper, stuff like that, catalytic converter specifically, that's not part of a car, you have to get a photocopy or scanned copy of their ID. You have to get the vehicle information they showed up in. You have to actually get a copy or take a picture of them also, their driver's license number. You have to have documentation of where the converter came from, what vehicle it came off of, who gave them the converter. Like I said, it's a long list of things, and from what I understand from the state, each time you do not do one of those, it's a separate charge. So just because you got his driver's license and that was it, there's 5 other things you didn't get, but it's very, very lengthy as far as all the documentation you have to have now.
Any advice for people who have these on their cars? What advice would you give people?
Well, in the past, we especially when they were hitting buses and nonprofit organizations and stuff like that, try to get them to park in well-lit areas behind, chained or fenced-in areas. Unfortunately, we've seen a couple of businesses where that didn't stop the thief because they cut the fence and went in. But just to kind of keep track of your vehicle and not leave it for extended periods of time.
When do you think people will finally get the message that you guys are cracking down on this?
Well, we're hoping this is the start of it. Again, this was a rather lengthy investigation. We had to wait for the right circumstances, and so when this new law came into effect, we had to research it and fully understand it before we could, make a decent move on it. We're just going to keep pressing because, until the actual converter thefts cease, there's always going to be someone there to recycle it and take it in.
Does this happen most often at businesses or individuals targeting cars or vehicles that were like at somebody's house?
It's happened to all the above. Typically in the city, it's been businesses, car lots, like I said, places where there's a number of buses or, church vans, things like that. But we've seen them in neighborhoods, individual residences, things like that also.
How do you know if it's been stolen? Will your car run funny or?
It sounds like it doesn't have a muffler on it. Yeah, because it's actually the section that's right before the muffler. One thing we're hoping too, Tim, and you brought up, is the price of the metals that are in the converters is starting to go down from what I understand. So again, if it's the whole, juice and the squeeze part of it, if it's not worth, the metals aren't profitable, it might cut it back just like it did with copper thefts.
Can you put a dollar amount on one catalytic converter?
I would say for an average car, probably by itself is, $300. The expense is when you have to have someone reinstall it, you have to re-weld the exhaust system together. We've seen some come off diesel trucks that are a couple $1,000 just for the converter itself. So, if you got an old S10, I think those are like $70. A Mercedes-Benz, for example, might have 4 on it, that $200 or $300 a piece, so that's just a lot depends on the vehicle.
I know the county, the sheriff's department recently busted some folks working at Mercedes and been stealing them for a long time.
Right.
Taking them out with trucks. So it's happening everywhere.
It is, like I said, it's a nationwide problem. You know, that's been going on for a while. And like I said, hopefully we can just do our part here to help keep our citizens from having to go through the headache of dealing with this type of theft.
Thank you, sir.
All right, good. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Act like we've done this a few times, Kip.
Just a few.
Been a time or two.